Krishna, Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. Om Gyan Timirandasya, Gyananjana Shalakaya, Chakshurani. Okay. All right. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So it's the 8th of June, 2022, broadcasting from Northland, New Zealand, Whangarei, and we're studying Bhagavad-gita as it is, the guidebook to success in life, first chapter. Let's now listen first to the most auspicious, purifying sound vibration coming from the lotus lips of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Please listen carefully. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to our ongoing adventure in discovering how to navigate life, the duality that is the reality here. Happiness, distress, hot, cold, love, hate, friends, enemies. How do we remain peaceful and satisfied, happy, undisturbed, equipoised in all these constantly changing dualities, the temporary reality? So let's jump right in. Bhagavad-gita, chapter 1, observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Text 37 and 38. Now I'm going to check and see if those who are on Krishna Kata Auckland and that is Krishna Kata Auckland Facebook and or YouTube platforms, and now on live streaming on Zoom as well, can see or hear. Otherwise, I'm going to restart the restream because I think I may have done it in the wrong order. It'll take about 2 minutes. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. If you're on Zoom already, you can hear me. Now, some people ask about culture. Some people ask about the value of culture. And Srila Prabhupada described our mission, his mission, sometimes as a cultural revolution, a spiritual revolution, but using culture to engage people according to their propensity, as well as their transcendental, natural transcendental ability to connect directly with Krishna through Lord Chaitanya's instructions by chanting Hare Krishna. Please say, I'm saying as a side note, please say if, in the chat, if you can hear or see me. Okay? Thank you. Hare Krishna. So that Prabhupada would describe like that. And he wanted us to use the culture. And yet in this verse, as you'll see, Arjuna is trying to do something else. Text 37 and 38. Yadyapyetena pashyanti lovapahata cetasa kulachaya kritam dosham mitradrohe chapatakam katam nagyayam asmabi papat asman nivartitum kulachaya kritam dosham prapasyadbir janardana. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace of Prabhupada. O Janardhan, although these men, overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, with knowledge of the sin, engage in these acts? If you're there with me now, please repeat. O Janardhan, although these men, overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, with knowledge of the sin, engage in these acts? Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. A Kshatriya is not supposed to refuse to battle or gamble when he is so invited by some rival party. Under such obligation, Arjuna could not refuse to fight because he was challenged by the party of Duryodhana. In this connection, Arjuna considered that the other party might be blind to the effects of such a challenge. Arjuna, however, could see the evil consequences and could not accept the challenge. Obligation is actually binding when the effect is good. I'll repeat that. Obligation is actually binding when the effect is good. But when the effect is otherwise, then no one can be bound. No one can be bound. Considering all these pros and cons, Arjuna decided not to fight. Excuse me. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham koti vachalam, pangam langayate girim, yatripatam ham vande Shri Gurum Niratarinam. By the mercy of the spiritual master, a lame man can cross over mountains, and a dumb man can compose eloquent poetry. Hare Krishna. So Arjuna is struggling here. Arjuna is struggling, just as we are struggling. And it's like he has a foot in both camps. He's a devotee. Thanks, Bev. The computers can't chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay, well, let us have a recording when we finish. Thank you, Bhakti-Vatsala. Pretty soon they'll be loving Krishna, right? Right. Yeah, right. So we're a little like that. Arjuna he's a pure devotee, and he knows what Krishna wants. At the same time, he is starting to argue with Krishna. So he's in one sense he's with Krishna personally, but it's amazing because you can be in a temple. Prabhupada said you can be in the temple and be an illusion in Maya. Maya's a pure devotee. She can't be in the temple. so clear, so obvious, but it takes someone who can, a tattvadarshi, like Srila Prabhupada. He can explain. He can give you the truth because he is seeing the truth. So Arjuna was personally, so-called physically, in Krishna's association, right? And yet he was struggling. He wasn't feeling peaceful or free. In fact, he was feeling completely bewildered and overwhelmed. He couldn't even stand up. At this point, I think he's probably sitting down or lying down on the chariot. He couldn't hold his bow. Now, this is a person, he's what people these days would call a He-Man, Herculean, physically powerful, not just big muscles, but powerful, and of a character, a nature is powerful. One of the most elevated personalities on the planet, if not the most, amongst the most, because he's a pure devotee. Still, Krishna's Yogamaya is playing here, and Krishna and Arjuna have arranged for Arjuna to be acting just like you and me, to be experiencing just like you and me, struggling, trying to work out how to be peaceful, how to be happy, how to be transcendental, undisturbed by the dualities. Someone acts inimically or does something, insults us, or we're disturbed. And someone else is friendly, excuse me, is friendly, oh, he's my friend. And okay, that's there. And we're not denying that experience. That would be what we call spiritual bypass, denying my present reality, the temporary reality. We don't want to do that. Still, we're struggling. And like Arjuna, so it's like having your foot in two different boats. And if you've ever done any boating, you know, like when you step from the wharf onto a boat, the wharf may be stable. Sometimes they're floating. The wharf may be stable, and the boat, there may be some swell or some surf, and the boat's going like this. So your one foot is set steady, and the other, so you're in between. Sometimes they call it no man's land. And if the boat drifts out a little bit, you could end up in the water. So we're struggling to be fully surrendered to Krishna, to be Krishna conscious ourselves and share it with others. And yet we've still got our attachments, our doubts, or our independence, our pride, our stubbornness. And therefore we are disturbed. We do get disturbed sometimes. Anyone who says he doesn't get disturbed, either he's, well, what does Prabhupada say? Two people can be happy. The Paramahamsa, someone who's completely transcendental already, fully liberated, Krishna conscious, Paramahamsa, or the fool. So if we pretend that we're undisturbed in our conditioned state, we're either foolish or liars. I'm saying that. Okay, you can challenge that if you want. That's okay. And as I said, we want to make this participatory. So on Facebook or YouTube, you can put a question or a challenge or a realization. And if you go to Zoom, because I've sent, you may or may not have the invitation I sent up for the Zoom. Either way, because if you're on Zoom, then we can talk personally. You can see me and talk to me directly as if we're in the same room. I've just sent that invitation out now, so I'm not expecting anyone join in right away. But starting next week, then you'll have that available. And I'll add your email addresses. I think I have yours, Bev. You may be on that list. I'm not sure if I have yours, Bhagavad-gita, and anyone else. This is international. Zoom's obviously international. And then you can join us, and we can be. You may not want to use video or Zoom. That either way, but it's available. So we're struggling, and our June, he exemplifies that. If we put ourselves exactly in our June's place, the specific purpose of Bhagavad-gita is to have the Bhagavad-gita as our success manual by example. Arjuna is giving the example. He's just like us, and we should know that. In one sense, we are Arjuna, Arjuna is us in this case. So we have Krishna in one sense. Prabhupada is giving us everything. He said, everything is there in my books. He's giving us Krishna all the time. And of course, we know spiritually, philosophically, that he's there in our hearts, and he's there. And as Prabhupada said, he's the Vishnu form, the Paramatma form in our hearts has got the 4 arms. And Prabhupada says with his all 4 arms, he's like this, come back to me, come back to me, come back to me. So he's calling us with all his 4 arms, 4 hands. So he's there, and yet we're in some ways we're living as if he's not there. We don't always feel close to him. We don't always feel peaceful. We don't always feel completely satisfied. We haven't fully surrendered ourselves, our very spiritual, our full spiritual beings to Krishna, and therefore we're not experiencing the full qualities of our, what I call the diamond self, the spiritual self. We know philosophically that the diamond, materially, the diamond is never changed. It may be covered with mud. It may be deep down under the earth. It may be covered by dust, smoke. The heart is covered in so many ways, but that diamond doesn't change. So when we're fully liberated, which is when pure devotional service actually begins, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, then we experience, we feel fully peaceful. We experience joy, compassion, humility, connection, love, transcendental anger, transcendental energy, satisfaction. All these qualities of the soul are there waiting. They don't disappear, they don't change, but they get covered by the cloud of illusion, which we have when we do anything outside of Krishna consciousness. So we can talk about a very high standard here, but the reality is, just as here, the very first chapter of Bhagavad-gita, Arjuna is establishing himself as bewildered, as struggling, so that we can identify with that. And that's why studying Bhagavad-gita again and again and again is so important, because a guidebook to success means that every moment, as also described in Bhagavad-gita, we know what to do and we know what not to do. And therefore we can follow the 2 of the main instructions of Lord Chaitanya to accept whatever is favorable for Krishna consciousness and reject anything that's not favorable. So, okay, so we may not accept everything that we even know we should do. I may know I should give up this bad habit, and yet I'm attached, so Krishna gives us that freedom. And yet the consequences of that is that we don't get the result that we want. If we accept things that are good for us, if we're not willing to take that step to give up that habit or that independence or that pride or the attachment or the doubt. Doubts are useful because we can get them cleared. Prabhupada said, Atmananda Prabhu, how can you say doubts are useful? Because actually, doubt is a function of intelligence. Just like in Kali Yuga, intelligent people become atheists. Why? Because everything in the name of religion, pretty much, is hypocrisy or just superficial, just lip service, and so much crime, so much materialism going on in the name of God. So intelligent people, they reject. Unfortunately, they throw the baby out with the bathwater. When you wash the baby in the tub, when you let the chuck out the dirty water, you don't chuck out the baby. So they chuck out the dirty water, and they people who become atheists, they chuck out God as well. That's not intelligent. But generally, intelligent people become it until they get the association of devotees, especially when we give them Prabhupada, the books or the words, the teachings, the example, the prasadam. When we give them Prabhupada, they get Krishna. And they become attracted. Oh, these people aren't like the other religionists. They're dancing in the streets. They're happy. They're wise. They're friendly. So if we can be friendly and help people, kind to them, just as, how is Krishna relating with Arjuna? Arjuna started, first of all, he's complaining about his condition. I'm bewildered. I can't even stand. I can't even hold my bow. My skin is burning. Krishna doesn't just jump in and say, well, you should do this, and you should chant Hare Krishna, and you should just get serious and surrender. I'm God. I know best. Why don't you listen to me? Krishna doesn't do that. And now we'll see as Arjuna starts to give his arguments, very considered, apparently very intelligent and practical. Krishna doesn't jump in. Krishna doesn't speak till the next chapter. He let Arjuna speak. So in the text 10 of the next chapter, contents of the Gita summarized, chapter 2. O descendant of Bharata, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. Now he starts to correct him, but he's smiling. Krishna's relaxed. Krishna's detached from the craziness, the illusion that Arjuna is going through. And here, and Arjuna is Krishna's very, very dearmost friend. Arjuna is Krishna's dearmost friend, and vice versa. So Krishna, he's apparently unconcerned about Arjuna's quandary, his suffering, his misery, his frustration. He's freaking out, in our Western slang colloquial. Arjuna's overwhelmed. He's freaking out. So if my grandson or grandsons, if I see that one day that they're going way off the wall, I mean, consider your children or your grandchildren or your close friends who are open to Krishna consciousness, or even in the family, they've been practicing devotees, and you see they're going off the rail. They're even taking intoxication or eating meat or something. You get very worried, and you may be jumping up and down. What can I do? This person was chanting 16 rounds before. Well, they were chanting regular rounds. They were studying. They were coming to the temple, having prasadam, offering their food, whatever level they were on. Now they're sliding down that slippery slope, and you know it. Naturally, you'll feel compassion, you'll feel care, you'll feel concerned, and you're wondering what to do. Now, I don't mean that Krishna wasn't concerned. He was. But just see his example of how he relates. He allows Arjuna to talk even his nonsense. He doesn't react and try to defeat Arjuna's arguments right away. He listens to him. And what is Arjuna saying? Because he's talking about culture. Prabhupada's talking about culture. And Arjuna, Arjuna's pointing out that these Kauravas, they're overtaken by greed. So he knows the quality of culture, what culture means. And they don't see any fault in even quarreling with the family, what to speak, and their friends, what to speak of killing the family. This is outrageous. Arjuna, he says, with knowledge, why should we, with knowledge? So Arjuna understands what the sin is. He understands the consequence. Why should we go along with their mood, their behavior? He's saying that's ridiculous. Krishna, that's ridiculous. And it's a very good argument. So Arjuna, being a devotee, he's naturally compassionate, but he's left out the most important factor. I think Prabhupada uses the example of many, many zeros. Someone may be a qualified scientist. You probably know about Oppenheimer, who helped create and detonate the first atomic bomb. I think they detonated it in some tropical atolls, islands, and he saw the mushroom cloud, and he was a very qualified scientist, but he had the one in front. He said, I think of Bhagavad-gita, time I am, destroyer of the worlds. So he was very, very rare, generally. Of course, we hear more from the outspoken, materialistic, greedy, atheistic scientists. I mean, that's what the government's promoting, and they want they have an agenda to destroy God, to take away the freedom and the autonomy and the sovereignty that is there in the very human being and human society. They want to control and manipulate. That's the nature of materialism. And Prabhupada said it's always been like that, more or less. You have the Hiranyakashipus, the Ravanas, who different times and places in history have taken over the world, much more powerful, much more able, and much more expertly than the Gates and the Rockefellers and the whoever else is amongst the Bilderbergs, whatever, those who, I remember when I was young, I was a teenager, I found a book, a paperback book, I forget where I found it, secondhand bookshop, saying, it said, none dare call it conspiracy. I think it was from the John Birch Society. None dare call it conspiracy. And then the sequel was call it conspiracy. So Krishna was educating me. So Arjuna, he's pointing out the conspiracy of the Kauravas. So it's valid. Thank you, Bhaktivatsala. one of your streams is having connection issues. Stand by, we're trying to restore the connection. Okay, yes. Very good point. So Arjuna's pointing out the conspiracy. And we know Duryodhana and Shakuni, with Dhritarashtra's sanction, tried to assassinate the Pandavas. And if it wasn't for them being pure devotees, great devotees, like Prahlad Maharaj, and with the advice and guidance of Krishna, really, through Vidura, they would have been killed. But they were outsmarted, just like Prahlad Maharaj outsmarted his father without even making any endeavor. So the Pandavas are completely protected. So, but the point is that Arjuna's pointing out the conspiracy, and yet, and he's right, all his arguments are correct, but he's missing the one in front. So it's not that he's wrong, but he left the one out of the, with the zero, putting the one in front of the zeros. You can have 10 million zeros. You can be intelligent, you can be qualified, you can be famous, you can be effective and improve. You can open hospitals, you can do so many good things, so-called good things, but they're not good because they don't last. In fact, doing good things without Krishna, outside of Krishna consciousness, is misleading. So it's people call it good, feeding the hungry, saving the whales, stopping pollution with plastic, cleaning up the oceans and the rivers. They're good, and they make life more comfortable here, which is okay. But without Krishna, it's just perpetuating the same illusion. So that's kind of, we don't say these kind of things always in public, unless it's appropriate and we're effective enough to catch the big fish without getting wet, so to speak, as Prabhupada put it. Then we may, but at least amongst ourselves and within myself, within yourself, you should be very clear. And that helps us to discern between what's good and what's transcendental. Because, for example, people think, oh, you Hare Krishnas, you're studying a book that was spoken on a battlefield. How can that be okay? Violence is bad. And Lord Buddha came to teach ahimsa. Himsa means violence, means without. You should never cause any violence. At the same time, we know that violence has its place. One time, someone asked Gandhi, because Gandhi was fully committed to nonviolence, nonviolent, non-cooperation protest, and change. And he did a lot of things, but he was using, not only was he using a Bhagavad-gita for political purposes, but he didn't have the whole picture. If someone comes and attacks me or my daughter, they asked Gandhi, what would you do if someone came to attack or abuse or molest your daughter? Would you just sit there and be pacifist? Won't do anything? No, it would be unnatural to do that. It would be natural to use force to protect his daughter. And so same for you and I. Now, security these days has been, because of the fear's been expanded so much. I'm living in this rented house up here in Whangarei, great house, three locks on the door, two deadbolts and one chain, 3 locks, and it's a quiet neighborhood. I don't know if there's any crime here, I mean, obviously this crime happened and it's good to be protected, but 3 locks. And on the back door, there's a key lock and there's a latch. So nothing wrong with security. Yes, we should protect ourselves. And that's real these days. I'm just saying that the level of fear and degradation is so expanded Kali Yuga, that security firms, the lock businesses, are doing very well. So, and people have no idea that the real security is in Krishna consciousness. No idea. And it's important for us to understand, by seeing Arjuna's example, seeing how he's acting. So I can be very intelligent, I can be very qualified, I can be very experienced, I can be very wise, I can be influential. Jordan Peterson, so many people, they're speaking very wonderfully. I mean, Jordan Peterson, just I mentioned him. I like what he presents very much, and he's got some. He uses a lot of biblical references, stories. He is a believer. He's a theist, and yet some things he says, they're just without real depth of spiritual understanding. So he's taken a stand against legislating how you and I, at least in Canada, would have to speak to a person who was not heterosexual. For example, I would have to use a pronoun, it, or whatever word I wanted you to use. You'd have to use that for me legally. And Jordan Peterson stood up and said, hang on a minute. How can you tell people what to say and what not? Without freedom of speech, there's no real freedom. There's no, then you're actually taking away, you're restricting sovereignty and independence of an individual. So one may be doing something very laudable like that, and we would agree with him in principle. At the same time, understanding the transcendental reality, if Krishna's not there, even having my sovereignty in the material world, my independence, my freedom to speech in the material world, it's meaningless, because I'm in the material world and I'm lost. I'm going to die, and then I'm going to get reborn and get sick and old again and again and again. Reborn, whether I'm reborn Christian or reborn Muslim or reborn Hindu or reborn Hare Krishna. Okay, reborn Hare Krishna may not be the same, because we have our spiritual bank account, which never is diminished. Still, the principle is there. So we don't want to be reborn. When I share this at almost every talk or class I give, that when we were initiated in London in 1971 in Brewery Place, in the original temple that Shyam Sundar built, constructed with help from so many other devotees, and in front of Shri Shri Radharani, Srila Prabhupada said during the lecture, if you simply chant 16 rounds a day and you follow the 4 regular principles, there is nothing that can keep you from going back to Godhead in this lifetime. If you chant 16 rounds a day and follow the 4 regular principles, there is nothing that can keep you from going back to Godhead in this lifetime. And then he raised his finger, he said, and that is a fact. And I've been aspiring to follow that ever since, making good progress, although it could be a lot more quick. Hare Krishna. So So just finalizing that point, that Arjuna's making very good points. We can't argue that one should not be overtaken by greed. One shouldn't be thinking about killing one's family ordinarily. On the transcendental platform, we know that Arjuna, for example, he killed in pure devotional service. Okay. He killed as service. Now, you don't say that, you don't want to say that to many people unless they're really serious and practicing a little bit aware, advancing Krishna consciousness. You don't want to put people off, because we don't want to pretend that everyone's transcendental, even though spiritually we know they are, and tell them things that we're going to send them away from Krishna consciousness. And it is very challenging sometimes. There are points in Prabhupada, statements that Prabhupada makes in his books, that people, even devotees, I know they object to. Sometimes, based on one statement of Prabhupada, devotees give up Krishna consciousness completely, because they think it's so wrong or harsh or not spiritual at all, not Krishna conscious at all. This is a big problem. I mean, I shouldn't say it's not a big problem, but for some people, they become focused on just that, and they forget about everything that Prabhupada has given them, whether it's their advancement for 1 year or 10 years or 40 years. They forget that transcendence is inconceivable, and Krishna is giving us as much as we can understand. So Krishna lets us he allows us to cultivate the weeds or the doubts that are there, like weeds. And those weeds, they come up. If we don't resolve them, if we're too proud or too attached to our independent thought, that I know better. Prabhupada, he's made a mistake. I know better. I'm more intelligent. People may not consciously think like that, but that's the message. Oh, Prabhupada said something that just isn't right. How can I accept that? So that's another discussion. So back to the point that Krishna is, he's not just tolerant of Arjuna. He's calm, peaceful, he's smiling. Whereas we, if we had a close friend or a child, someone very dear, a beloved person, we saw them going off, would we remain calm, or have we remained calm, undisturbed, wise? Krishna knows exactly what's going on. So it's not that he's unconcerned. It's not that he doesn't care. But he gives Arjuna the space, the time to express himself, to argue with him. He's not worried about that. He lets Arjuna vent. So when we deal with people who are in some emotionally charged situation, we can learn how to do that. For me, it's applied Shravanam Kirtanam, especially in terms of what Srila Rupa Goswami says, explaining and describing the Priti Lakshanam, the 6 types of exchanges of love between devotees. I mention this in almost every class, because the quality of our Krishna consciousness depends on the quality of our relationships, our association. And the quality of our relationships depends on the quality of our communication with that or those people, that person or those people. So we want to become detached, but not insensitive. I would say considerate, caring, and assertive. Not reacting, but responding according to where they're at, ideally by reflecting how they're thinking and feeling. It's called reflective listening, sometimes nonviolent communication. It's the most powerful thing. And the more we as devotees learn how to do that, the more we will not only be peaceful and effective ourselves, because it starts with ourselves. We listen to ourselves, we honor ourselves, we value our own feelings and thoughts, even if they're completely materialistic or ugly or doubts. We validate that without giving into it. It's not about wallowing in self-blame or guilt or fear. No, but we can purify, we can transform the unhealthy fear, doubt, anxiety, attachment by acknowledging it instead of running away from it. As Krishna says to Arjuna in a question, he makes a statement in a question: what will repression accomplish? So Krishna consciousness is not about stopping what we're doing. It's about dovetailing, learning how to dovetail our lower nature. Some aspects of our lower nature are easy to. I mean, the tongue is crazy and wild, but it's easy to pacify it, to engage it. Eating prasadam and chanting Hare Krishna, chanting, dancing, and feasting. That's our process: chanting, dancing, and feasting. So those are some points, and there's a lot more to say about all of them. But let's see if there's so let's please share any comments or questions further. Yes. If someone gets their computer to chant Hare Krishna, they can do so as an act of love for Krishna. Exactly. So even mostly technology, computers, screens, they're demeaning, degrading, they're deviating. At the same time, just like now, I'm using a screen, I'm using technology, some pretty advanced technology in some cases. Excuse me. To serve Krishna and share Krishna consciousness with you, anyone else is with us. So yeah, someone can make their computer chant Hare Krishna. I don't make my computer chant Hare Krishna. I just use one of these, my mantra box. Whoops, the battery's running out. I have that running. I have this one running all night long. In my room, little mantra box. Doesn't even need an internet connection. Got a battery and a chip inside. They're available. So, any other thoughts, questions, comments, realizations, doubts? Please share. Let me see if there's anyone with us on Zoom. Probably not yet. But just put it in chat. And we've got a few more minutes. Excuse me. Hare Krishna. Share any thoughts, doubts, realizations. So, yes, this principle of dovetailing, using the technology for Krishna, it's described in Nectar by Srila Rupa Goswami, Yukta Vairagya. And in fact, Rupa Goswami makes the statement that if something apparently material is not used for Krishna, that is incomplete. Incomplete pronunciation. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. And just to remind you, I'll add you to our Zoom email list, and you can be more interactive if you want. There's more facility in Zoom. Therefore, I've arranged to have this dual, triple streaming now with the Krishna Katha Facebook and YouTube pages, and now live stream on Zoom. Okay. And also, we're having a Mangalarti late morning program starting at 5:30 here at my little house, my humble abode here in Whangarei, in the suburbs. Perfect place that Krishna has blessed me with. It's amazing in so many ways. And so if you want to be invited to that, because we have a live Zoom every day starting, well, it's actually Tuesday through Friday, 4 days a week so far. Starting at 5:30, we have basic Mangalarti, Lord Nrsimhadev prayers, condensed Tulsi prayers. Then we have usually a Bhagavatam discussion, one verse and some discussion and questions, answers, and sharing like that. So if you'd like to join that, and you don't, if you send me your email address, then I can send you the Zoom invitation, and it's open. You join or don't join. You don't need to use the video, even if you do join us, whenever you feel inspired. I did it because I know that when I really reestablish the practice of basic sadhana in my life, then Prabhupada is pleased and everything else becomes possible. Everything else becomes possible. So I've reestablished that, which I haven't really done properly, regularly, for decades, since I moved away from the ashram, out of the ashram, and then away from the temple property. So please, if you like to join us or have the option to join us, if and when you want, and you can join us anytime. You don't have to be there for the beginning or the whole thing. Just it's 5:30 Tuesdays, 5:30 a.m. Tuesdays through Fridays, and you'll get the invitation every day, whether you join or not. All right. Thank you, Bev and Bhakti-Vatsala. Anyone else is with us, you can send anything on the chat. I've made a lot of points. Hopefully it's caused a few questions or doubts. If not, that's good too. All right, everyone. Thank you for your association and your attendance and your encouragement. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Rama. Rama Rama Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Bhagavad-gita as it is ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hare Hare Bol. Gaur Premanandi.